Hi, I'm Tim Moss with Custom Guns, Ammo, and Repairs. We posted a video not too long ago on the Scout, and in that video I had mentioned that when you mount a scope on a Picatinny rail that you want to mount it back because it wants to march back under recoil. Well, I thought that was kind of straightforward and everybody knew that, and I would just mention it, just for those that didn't know. But apparently a lot of people don't know that. So I've heard from quite a few people that told me that I was saying just the opposite of what they were taught. So I tried coming up with different ways to explain it to them. One of them was a bullet puller. You guys that reload know that this is a bullet puller, and sometimes when we reload, we might make a mistake and want to pull the bullet out because we want to save it. So when you use a bullet puller, if you imagine the table's your shoulder, and this is the gun going off, and when it hits the table, it's hitting your shoulder. That's how you take a bullet apart. And if I keep tapping on that long enough, or you hear it rattling, we just separated the bullet. So the bullet separated and marched backwards. So it's the same principle, but even some of the guys didn't understand. They didn't understand that. And I heard from an engineer with a PhD even. And he told me, no, that's absolutely wrong. You gotta mount towards the back of the Picatinny rail, or mount towards the front, because it will march towards the front, not towards the back. He said I had it opposite, and he had some mathematical equations to prove that he was correct. So proof's in the pudding. So I really can't. I'm not a mathematician. I'm not a PhD in engineering. But I've done a lot of guns. I've shot them and worked on them all my life. And I know that scopes march backwards. And it was actually the engineer. He was told me I didn't understand impulses. He was getting hot. And I kind of kidded him a little bit. And I said, no, I understand impulses. I'm having one now. But anyhow, I was just kidding around. But he challenged me to go ahead and put it on video, mount a scope, put it to the front, and see if it marches backwards the way that I say that it will, or does it stay to the front the way that he says that it's going to. So that's what we're doing today. We have a Savage. We're going to do a video on this Savage another time. This thing came in and was grouping 3 inches, and now it's grouping well under an inch, but that's not what this video is for. We're using it because it's been in the shop and it's available. It's got a Trijicon scope. It's got nice rings. It's got a Picatinny rail. And what I did was I took some white out and I made an arrow right here that lines up with an arrow here. And with white out, we have a nice line and we can tell if there's any separation. So we mounted this scope forward, and if I'm correct, it's going to march backwards with recoil. Now, I got a couple pounds of torque on these screws. They're not tightened all the way because we're not going to go through boxes and boxes. I brought 4 shells. Since these screws aren't real tight, I imagine within 4 shots it should march back if I'm correct. So anyhow, we're going to find out if the engineer's correct or I'm correct. And of course, I think I'm going to be correct or I wouldn't be doing the video, right? But I could be wrong. So we're gonna move over, set up, and start taking some shots, and see which way, if this scope stays where the engineer says it's going to stay, or it's going to march backwards the way that I say it's going to march backwards. Just from a lot of years' experience, I've always seen them march backwards. I've never seen them march forward. And one thing that kind of sticks with me, I took a deer hunt back in like '85. It was if I told you guys the name, you guys would know what it is. Anyhow, it was a $6,000 hunt back in '85. So it was a long plane trip, and vibrations are bad for screws. So anyhow, as soon as I got to the airport and they picked me up, they said, hey, you got time for an afternoon hunt. So I didn't get a chance to shoot my gun or make sure that the screws were tight or any of that. So we went out and, I shot one deer, and where I was hunting, you could shoot 2. I shot 1 deer. After that deer came out, a really nice buck came out, lip curling, and I mean, he was a really big buck, and I completely missed it. And what had happened is my screws had come loose in the plane, the vibration of the plane. I had my scope to the front, I took that first shot and it made the scope jump back. So then by the time I shot at the nice buck, it was off. So a $6,000 lesson like that, you don't forget. But I'm open to what the engineer told me. He said, let's see what happens. He challenged me to make a video and to record what happened. So that's what we're going to do. Next thing we're going to do is we set up and firing shots. So we completed a 4-shot test. All we did was 4 shots, and we have a solid 1/16 movement, at least 1/16, and it might have been 1/8. I don't have calipers down here, but I can tell you it's a solid 1/16, and I believe the camera has captured it moving backwards. So for you guys that are saying, you know, mount your scope at the front of the Picatinny rail all the way forward, you know, if you have everything tightened down right, you might not get movement. But the tendency is the scope for it to creep backwards. So for you guys that have mounted it towards the front and never had any movement, that's great for you guys. You're probably using your Loctite and had it down to the right torque specs. But your scope will move backwards. And as a, you know, just an extra precaution, I always like to put it on the Picatinny, slide it all the way back, and then tighten it to torque specs. But you know, like I told you, the engineer had mathematical equations to show me that it marches forward. You know, that's all nice, well and good, but you know, the true test is go out there, shoot it, and see what happens. And we just did that, and it marches backwards. So some guys are telling me that they visited Vortex's website, Loopholds, the NRA, and all of them say that it marches forward. Well, you know, if you want to be wrong, you're in good company with those guys. But I would go with real world experience. So I always mount it back. It always marches backwards. I've never had a gun where it didn't march backwards. If the things came loose. So if things stay tight and you mount it towards the front, well, that's great. It's probably not going to move for you. But if things loosen up a little bit, it is moving backwards. And I think that we took the PhD engineer, we took his challenge, and he clearly lost on this. Of course, he might come up with some reason why, other than the facts, but you guys saw it. It marches backwards.